All right, Ron, we are live. So, welcome back, everyone, to Life After Legal. Today, I am very excited to introduce Ronald Zink. We'll go ahead and give Ron a hand clap. You know, I love my little hand clap app that I have going on here. Oh, I don't know if she's working right now. Let's see. All right. Well, anyway, I'll go ahead and give Ron a hand clap myself.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Ron actually is a graduate of NYU Law School, and he now works in healthcare administration for a Trauma One hospital here in Philadelphia. It is a very large healthcare system here that a lot of people know. But if you're not from Philadelphia, maybe you know the university associated with it. It is Temple University, and I am very interested in this specific talk because I remember hearing about Ron being a law school graduate and then going into pretty much healthcare administration. And I'm like, how do you segue a law degree into a long time career managing or working as an administrator in a hospital? So we'll go ahead and start off. Ron, I think this is the part where you pick up the story and you let me know your story from pretty much college or law school, wherever you want to start it, up until now. We all want to know, how do you make that transition?
Well, I want to say I started with an undergraduate degree in management. And when I came out of college in 1981, it was a recession. And so I started looking for industries that I thought would be relatively recession proof. And so I went into healthcare. I went with one of the Fortune 500 companies in the Fortune 500 service industry, service master industry, which at that time sold services of about 40 different departments of healthcare. So they'd subcontract running from housekeeping, which they were most known for, laundry, to security, materials maintenance, any of the support services. And so I started talking to people at Service Master Industry about, why would I join from the service industry side if I wanted to get into healthcare? And what they said is, certain departments like housekeeping and materials management touch all the departments. So if you really want to understand healthcare, if you work in like materials management, every supply that comes into every department comes through your department. So I agreed to work for them and they agreed to hire me. And so I started my career there. And through a series of events and a number of, I'll call it just good luck, Service Master Industry sold all services for the first time ever to Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital in New Brunswick. At that time, it was Middlesex General. While I was there for the decade, it converted into Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital. And I found myself, and along the way, I picked up a master's degree, and I found myself in my early 30s, kind of in charge of a lot of these departments, but saying, okay, I'm kind of at the top of my pinnacle. There's not a lot I can do from here. And I had the good fortune to have a boss who was the COO and eventually became the president of Robert Wood Johnson. And we started talking about, if you're really serious about advancing, maybe you need some type of clinical degree. And then one night, as we were talking, somehow a law degree came up. And we started saying, okay, everything is regulated. If you can understand how regulations occur and how to figure out what the law really is going to be interpreted, that's a huge benefit. So I applied to law school at Rutgers and got accepted. And I found that going from New Brunswick to Rutgers Camden, which had the more of the business law than the one in Newark. Newark was much more social justice geared. It was a long commute, and making it work seemed almost impossible. So I found a job in the Temple Health System, Episcopal, only it wasn't Temple at that point, it was still Episcopal. And I completed my law degree. And then I decided while I was in law school, tax law, all business transaction looks to minimize expenses, and taxes are one of the major expenses. Let me really understand and get better at that. And I applied to NYU's tax law program and got accepted into that. And so I got my LLM in tax law, at which time I had the good fortune that my wife's company was taking a case to the Supreme Court around the use of patent law. And they had a patent that the states were infringing upon. And federal governments can use patents without paying any royalties. The states, it had never been tried. So I got to be firsthand involved with that. And 5-4, we lost for states' rights. And so states could use patents without paying any type of royalties. But I got really kind of engaged in that. And I graduated with my LLM, found a law firm that was willing to hire me, tendered my resignation at Temple, and I got this phone call. And it was the CEO of the health system who said, we've talked. I thought you wanted to get a law degree so you could advance your healthcare degree. I said, yeah, that was the initial plan, but I kind of found this stuff and I've done some side consulting and, talked about, he says, I know all that, but you wanted to be in healthcare. I said, yeah, I did. And he said, what are they going to pay you? And I said, well, they don't pay all that much at the beginning, but, it's first step. And this is how I build my career. He said, look, you want to build your career, I'll match what they're paying. And I promise you that I will give you more exposure to different clinical things in healthcare than you could ever get anywhere else. And he said, right now we're hiring a consultant to revitalize how we do our hours. And we've just hired this former thoracic surgeon and transplant surgeon who's had to have his hips replaced, so he can't do surgery anymore. So why don't you work with him and the consulting firm, and you'll learn a whole lot about perioperative services and things. So I said, okay, I can give this a try for a while. 2 years went by, and then one day he said, it's time for you to change. We're in the nursing home industry, and we're not getting the results we want out of it, so we're getting out of the nursing home industry. I want you to be responsible for getting rid of all the assets that happens in our 3 nursing homes. Some of the buildings are HUD related and owned. Some we own. Some we have contracts with the city. So you're going to use your law degree, and you're probably going to be more in court than you ever thought you would be. And sure enough, there was a lot of regulations that you had to go through, especially when, the federal government owns some buildings. You're getting federal funds for certain things. Some of the assets were bought through bonds that you had to figure out how you dealt with the bond owners. And so I spent 18 months essentially getting rid of those assets.
Wow.
And then we were in the process of acquiring another institution, And he said, this due diligence stuff, that's legal. And figure out how you're going to be involved in that and the employment contracts that they have with the professional services. So I spent 6 months as we did that. And then he said, we've got the Department of Radiology. And he came back to me and he said, we've got 7 physicians when we're supposed to have 30. We have all these subcontracts with locums companies. We spend way too much money on buying assets. I want you to kind of be responsible and coordinate those efforts. And what happened over that time is I found I had incredible freedom to do certain deals around selling professional services to other institutions of the radiologist, working on how certain legal deals were structured within our own health system between different entities, working with a variety of contracts, as well as the opportunity to develop business and kind of be responsible for my own book of business, both profit and expenses. So that's kind of the abridged version of my career.
Well, that is an amazing career. I've learned things today that I did not know. I mean, I'm hearing about Supreme Court cases, which that's interesting in itself. I'll try to leave that alone. But also, I think this is really incredible that in the healthcare industry, it seems like you're doing a lot of M&A deals. Like there's a lot of.
Uh, I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on which side of the coin you are, many freestanding institutions that provide healthcare can't survive. So they're becoming part of health systems, chains, both on the revenue side, the ability to negotiate with the insurance companies when you're a freestanding institution versus, some of the mega chains that have 1,000 institutions, it's a very different feel. So for reimbursement, they're being forced into doing it. And then on the other side, for buying, when you buy for one institution and you buy one CAT scan, every 5 years, you're going to pay one thing. When you're buying for 1,000 institutions and you're buying, 500 CAT scans every year, you get a different price.
Yeah, you get a deal.
And so M&A work is becoming a necessity. As you're aware, the health system that we work with just acquired Chestnut Hill. We acquired the assets of the former CTCA institution when they left Philadelphia. But interestingly, when CTA first started, I sold professional services of radiologists to them while they were first getting started. And then we also made a deal that for services they couldn't provide, they transfer them to Temple. We would provide it and then transfer them back. So we had a relationship with them. So M&A work is becoming a necessity for every health system. And we have an integration officer who is an attorney that's his full-time job.
Wow.
Making sure that those type transactions, once you acquire them, integrating them and all the legal transferring of the different contracts, setting things up, full-time job if you're a growing institution.
Now that's very interesting. For some reason, I don't know why. I thought that your job was like more clinical, and now I'm listening and I'm like, well, no wonder this is a legal job, and maybe more lawyers need to hear this because This is, I mean, what you're doing, that is very a legally intensive job. Even speaking about like hearing you talking about how you had to liquidate assets, I'm like, that's what I do in trust and estates. I mean, I work in trust and estates work, and I'm hearing you say how you have to, get rid of assets that are no longer needed. I'm like, hold on now, this is what's happening over at the banks, and it sounds like that's what's happening in healthcare. But one of the things I really want to touch on is that someone on your path made sure that you continued on your quest to stay in healthcare. How important would you say it is for someone that's looking to change careers to have a mentor or have someone to kind of shepherd them into what it is you do for work, or even just changing careers as a lawyer?
So I'm going to take it a step broader. I think not as a lawyer, but any person, having not one mentor, but a few people that are helping you go through life, figure out what the options are. Because, most of us, we initially think of the options of what our parents did and know what our parents' industry was, but without a wider perspective, you really don't know all the different things that are out there. And it's impossible to figure them out. I mean, when I was in high school, and I'm fairly mechanically inclined, as your grandfather was, and so in high school, and I was good in physics and stuff, so I took an aptitude test, and they said I should become a plumber. So, okay, the guidance counselors that you have kind of give you good advice, but they don't have a lot of perspective either. So the more people that you have that you look at their careers and say, yeah, they were kind of successful, and they tell you their perspective. I've been very fortunate in that I've had a number of people in life kind of talk to me about, okay, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? And somehow I had the good sense to listen to some of them. My uncle has a saying that I actually have on my wall. You're never responsible for the advice you're given. You're always responsible for the advice you take.
I love that. Can we say that again?
Sure. You're never responsible for the advice you're given. You're always responsible for the advice you take.
Ding, ding, ding.
And so sometimes very well-meaning people will give you advice that's not really applicable to you in your situation. And so it is hard to sort it out if you listen to more than one, but I think it's important because the variety of opportunities that are out there is endless. And figuring out the pathway you get on is challenging. One of the things that my father used to say growing up is you have to be careful of the Sears mentality. You take a job, you walk in, and you know everything about that job. You can know when the item's going to go on sale again. You can know the discount, but that's all you know because you get stuck in that rut and it becomes very comfortable. It's not a rut. And you make enough money, you figure out how to survive, and that's your life. But it doesn't have to be. And so there's a book that's been around forever called What Color is Your Parachute? And it talks about how you assess what your skills are and what you like to do and start challenging people to think about how you take those skills that you have and apply them in a different way. And I think my father was very emphatic with all of us growing up that you do what you like And when you stop liking it, you got to change. You got to do
Absolutely.
things differently. And I, as a kid, had a lot of different things I tried. I mean, I leased an ice cream truck and ran an ice cream truck one summer. I, have worked for the Forestry Service one summer. I did a lot of different things. And my father just kept saying, keep trying to figure out something you like. Um, and I did look into healthcare. And I have, like I said, had the good fortune to talk to a number of people. And most people are willing to offer you help and guidance. And most recently, I had an employee resign, and we're talking about it. And he said, well, I didn't get the opportunity I thought I would. I was in the same job for 5 years, and I didn't go where I want. And I said to this guy, well, where did you want to go? And he told me a job that I'd never even considered him for, never even thought about, but he never asked
Mm.
and never told me, because I could have helped mentor him and he may or may not have gotten in that job, but he didn't. And I think, like with the legal education that we get and exposure, there's almost nothing that is not regulated.
Hmm.
And that regulation, and understanding how that can apply and how to understand when to apply it and when it doesn't apply, and understanding, like I have through the training, the implications of certain structures of entities, um, and the cost of those, that affects every business. So there's not anything that a legal background won't help with. The question is, a lot of people who enter the legal education have a perception that they want to go to court and they want to defend people for, whatever variety of things they want to defend people for. And that's great. We certainly need people to do that. We need people to prosecute, but that's a very limited view of what a legal education can help you with.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better than me. And I will ask one quick question because I know for me, in my family, when you don't take the traditional career path of becoming the lawyer that goes to court, uh, I don't know about in your family. Did anybody ask you why you didn't take that traditional career path? Almost
Oh
like,
yeah.
well, why didn't you want to do that? Because I get that a lot from family members. Now, maybe
Um,
not my mom as much, maybe a little bit, and you could talk to her about that. But overall, I do get a lot of family members like, well, I thought you went to law school. Why aren't you at court? Why don't you work for a court? Like, why are you at a bank? And I'm like, then I have to explain to them they do have this limited view of what a lawyer is. So can you expand on that?
um, you know, Fortunately, my immediate family um, really didn't care what I did and don't care. Uh, as long as, you're making money and not hurting people, they're happy. But I got a tremendous amount of people at work and socially that said, you went to law school, you spent all that money, and you're not going to court. Why aren't you doing that? You're blowing that education that you worked so hard to get. Um, there was this one lady at my church who I thought you would think I was killing her because she kept coming up, and she's very much, I call her aunt, um, because she really does care about me. And she just couldn't understand why I stayed in healthcare instead of going to do it. And, when I was applying to law school, one of my good friends from undergraduate decided that he should think about going to law school too. And so we went through, the Kaplan course to prepare for the LSAT together, and kind of were encouraging each other as we were writing applications and things like that. And he didn't get in. And then when I got in and then went to the LLM and then didn't become a corporate lawyer in a law firm, he was like, dude, you got this opportunity I didn't get and you're blowing it. Why? And other people unfortunately tend to have a negative impression of attorneys. They really think that attorneys are very adversarial individuals and will be willing to compromise their ethics and principles to win a case regardless. And a number of people had said, oh, I'm glad you didn't compromise your principles. And I looked at them like, what the heck?
You can't win.
Okay. And I remember we had, I forget the actual course, but we had in law school at Rutgers, a community practicing physician who had to fill in because the regular professor, something happened. And so they got this guy as an adjunct. And one of the things that we'd learned just the previous semester was in property class, you have to be prepared that your clients will lie to you. Mm-hmm. And, so we come in and this guy says, wait a second, you guys have learned this wrong. Your clients will give you their perspective and they will paint the picture in a way that they think they need to get you to support them. Mm-hmm. So you have to, kind of take it off and trying to take in from their perspective and then help them get comfortable that they need to tell you everything, wrong, right, and work through it. So I really walked away with the impression that attorneys really have to have a real strong sense of ethics. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we haven't convinced the general public that exists. And so I think the more of us who talk about that and aren't like some of the TV attorneys that people get that will be a bit assertive on to win a case regardless, that'll help us.
Yes, I do think that lawyers and attorneys have horrible PR. We have no public relations department to really help us, keep kind of a clean image. People think of attorneys and they think of us as just a monolith. They think we're all litigators, which is totally not true. Most attorneys never even see a courtroom. And many attorneys work in fields like you that, doesn't require court at all. So I agree that we definitely need to do.
I have had to go to court for healthcare.
Oh, well, then I take that back. I take that back. Well, then okay. Well, but, there are a lot of attorneys who don't need to go to court.
Right.
Maybe not Ron exactly, because Ron is out here doing rock star things. And it seems that healthcare administration, it requires a lot of different skills. So you could name, what would an average day require as a healthcare administrator? Just really quick for people who may be thinking about this job, let them know what that day looks like typically.
All right. So I'm going to kind of try to roll through this morning. So this morning, one of the things I had to deal with is we are expanding our capacity at one of our facilities, and we don't have the internal resources to provide the professional services of anesthesia we need to. So I had talked with this firm about, you know, buying some of their time from them and the contract that would need. And then today, this morning, it came up that we really were going to be manipulating that. And were we going to need that contract or not? How could I make that contract so that it was kind of as we need it, we pay for it and not a flat fee? So I was dealing with that. Um, we had a state inspection a couple weeks ago of one of our facilities. There, that inspection, as almost any inspector, when they come through, they find a couple things. So you have to have a response to those. And again, there are more than one way to meet the legal requirement. So I had basically, we were down to two alternatives. I made a recommendation to the health system that we go with this other approach to it. So again, it was knowing the regulation, knowing what was actually required, knowing what we would have to do to meet it in alternative ways. So that really requires you to research the regulation. In fact, I'm going to take a little sidestep. Just the day before, again, looking at contracting for professional services with another company to provide physicians to read x-rays and create final reports on off hours. There was a question around payment from CMS. There had been the perception that if it was payment from CMS, that it was required to be billed by this company. Well, I had gone through and looked at the regulations and I didn't see that. And so I said during the discussion with them, so you do the professional billing and you do that in lieu of billing us for those services. And that's the only way you'll do business, is what I'm hearing. And they said, no, that's not correct. You are correct. You're not legally required to do that, but you are legally required that you set it up in each state where you have the provider working. So in this case, because it's night hours, a lot of the people who would be working were working on the other side of the country. So it would have required us to individually register that site where everyone lived, and there were three of them, and they lived in different sites with CMS. So it became administratively more expensive to do that. And as they transition, because every 3 to 5 years, most people are changing jobs, so we'd have to go through that again. And one would be in Oregon, well, the next one may be in Kansas. So then, and it is a fair amount of administrative work to set up a legal location at every location. So it became much simpler. Okay, makes sense. You go ahead and deal with that, and we'll just waive that.
Yeah.
So then I had to talk with an attorney who's being sued on malpractice. And, everyone, when you're being accused of doing something inappropriately, you're nervous. And, I had to be able to help him understand what was going to happen, the type of questions he'd get in the deposition, how he needs to think the process through. And, essentially, I told him, first thing you got to do, go home tonight, go someplace quiet, listen to some music for about a half hour, and then write down everything you remember about it. Remember and often, with legal suits in malpractice, they have up to 2 years. So most people aren't filing it till like 19 months because they're depending on people to have forgotten. And when you're a radiologist and you're reading 20 to 40 cases a day, remembering a case from 19 months ago is very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so just helping them kind of understand the process, understanding what they need to do so that they can get through the process. Um, so, and now it's only 7:30 in the morning.
Yes, and it's only the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, now unfortunately, as your mother knows very well, her mother and I work um, together closely. I start my day most days at 5:30. So then, I do rounds. So I'm walking around, finding out what's happened. I go into the emergency room every day, figure it out, because by knowing what happened that night, two things. One, the night shift gets to know that I'm coming through every morning, and I made a decision with them a long time ago. Make a decision, do the right thing. If you don't know what the right thing to do and it's jeopardizing someone's health, call me. Otherwise, make a decision, and in the morning, we'll work through it and resolve it. So, any issues that they've had, we discuss. Fortunately, this morning, there weren't any. It was a quiet night. Um, and so, I walked through and then had a conversation with the CEO, and we went over a number of things, one of which was what I had prepared on. Here's our alternative on this. We talked about performance standards of individuals. I forget what else we talked about. And then I began starting to prepare some documentation on different things we're doing in the organization to look at how we can grow the business and what our challenges are. In particular, right now, with Chestnut Hill coming on board, we are having to turn over the IT functions that were all provided by the previous owner to us come 9/1. So, and one of the things that we knew that we have professional service agreement with radiologists from a different group that we're going to retain, but part of that is they also work for another site. So when they're working for another site, they have to lease that space from us for fair market value. So as the owner changes, we have to reassess the fair market value. So there was a little discussion about that today, how we did that. And then we have some equipment that we can't necessarily operate the way we normally operate things, and it's leased. So we were thinking, okay, how are we going to get out of these leases? It's not the end of the lease, but we're probably going to buy a new piece of equipment that gives us more latitude in how we operate it. So this piece of equipment isn't worth anything to me, but I'm still got another 16 months on the lease.
Wow. So now we're talking about in one day deal negotiations, real estate law, equipment, sounds like equipment financing, and that's also another deal, logistics. Like we're talking about a lot in one day. This sounds like the kind of job that you absolutely need to learn on the job because that's just so many. We're talking about litigation. I mean, this touches on so many different areas of law that I guess if you are interested in several different areas, this is like the perfect job for you.
Well, I kind of refer to it as you kind of you're never an associate. You
Mm,
know, I'm in a partner level.
yeah.
I there's some pieces that I know and do my own research, but a lot of times we have a legal department. We actually, in some cases, I've reached out to the law school because Temple has a law school
Mhm.
and asked them to give me a white paper on something because there are so many different aspects of it. I can't know all the details.
Yeah.
So, but like a partner level, you get someone to give you an analysis, their opinion, a white paper on, okay, here are the things. And then I get to help make the decision.
Mm, okay. Now, I usually close out all of my shows by doing a rapid fire round where I basically ask you which job is better? Which one would you prefer? Do you prefer being a lawyer or do you prefer healthcare administration? And then we do it by topic. So, for instance, who gets paid more? Do you think that lawyers get paid more or healthcare administrators get paid more?
I will tell you it depends.
Okay.
And here's why. Um, if you're the CEO of a healthcare system, you will make as much as an equity partner in New York City.
Exactly.
If you're at my level, I will probably make as much as an equity partner in a medium sized firm in New Jersey.
Okay. Okay. Which is not bad. As
It's
a
not
matter of
bad. You
exactly.
know, I'm not worrying where my next meal's coming from.
We all know that, right? Okay, here's another one, and I know the answer to this one, but I have to ask it anyway. Which one has better work life balance, being a lawyer or working in healthcare administration?
I think, again, it depends. If you're in a single practice law firm and your name's out on the shingle, anytime the phone rings or somebody knocks at the door, you better be prepared.
Yeah.
Um, at my job, unfortunately, I'm 24/7,
Yes, you guys
365.
are 24/7. I know. I'm like, no, I guess I should be very specific. Let's say with a lawyer, not partner track, but a regular lawyer at a law firm. Or maybe we should do partner track because that's the level that you're on. So maybe a partner track lawyer
I,
at a medium
I,
firm.
I would say that healthcare can be more demanding.
Exactly. I knew it. Yeah. You guys are all the time, all the calls, always, you're pretty much like doctor level when it comes to uh, being available.
Right.
And then lastly, I guess I would say that I know the answer to this one, but maybe I don't. Which one has better opportunities for advancement, being a lawyer or being a healthcare administrator?
I would think being a healthcare administrator.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Um, the problem is, unless what's Denton still the largest law firm in the world at this point?
Yeah,
All
more
right.
than likely.
So if you're in Denton, you probably have more opportunities than if you're in a small healthcare hospital. But there are roughly 5,000 hospitals in the country. Transferring from hospital to hospital is easier than transferring from law firm to law firm. So then the question is growth within a health system. You know, Temple is a small to medium sized health system in comparison to some of them. Um, and I have found that there's been a ton of opportunity for me. Um, I don't know that if you're in a medium sized law firm, that's really the case,
Hmm.
especially as lawyers in law firms, you tend to develop a niche base of business. What you're known for, whether it's estate, whether it's M&A, whether it's family law, you get kind of known for that skill set. And getting an opportunity to do something out of your skill set um, sometimes is politically threatening to that other sub bucket.
Mm.
One good friend of mine that went to NYU with me is expertise in nonprofit bond issuing.
Oh, wow. This is very
And
specific.
yeah, very specific. And one of the clients that he had some UBIT business, and they wanted him to go ahead and issue the bonds for the UBIT. The law firm that he was in wouldn't allow it to happen. Your nonprofit bonds, that's your specialty. That's what you do. You need to hand the client over to this bond session that works on the profit.
Oh, wow.
Um, so, having not really worked in that world a lot, but know a fair number, I really do get the sense that you are more entrenched in what your expertise that you develop is, and changing is more difficult. Whereas with, in my case, an MBA and a law degree, I say everything in healthcare is a business and regulated. And they allow me the flexibility. Now, I don't know if all of a sudden we start having a flood of attorneys in healthcare that
Yeah.
wouldn't develop in that specialty.
Well, I don't know. I highly doubt that there will be a flood of lawyers into into healthcare. But I'm hoping that this conversation does open the door to many who are interested in this field of work. I know there are a lot of people who come from healthcare over to law. When I went to law school, I worked with a woman who was in law school and she worked in nursing homes. I went with a doctor who was a surgeon in New Jersey. He also graduated with me. So there's a lot of people with healthcare backgrounds that eventually go to law school. And I don't think that they think about this as a career path. So thank you so much, Ron, for even speaking to everyone about this. This is going to help so many people. If someone wants to reach out to you, do you feel comfortable giving out your email so that people can reach out if they have questions about working in healthcare administration?
Sure, but I'm going to give out my personal one, which I will admit that I don't check, but probably once a week on the weekends, because I have enough of work emails that I don't get to that. But it's Ronald E. Zink, and Zink is spelled Zink, not C, at gmail.com.
Well, thank you so much, Ronald. This has been a very informative talk. I've learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else is happy to have listened to all of the wealth of information that you gave, including books and examples of mentors. But thank you so much. This meant a lot to me. So, all right, another round of applause for Ron. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Make sure everyone that you tune in next time to Life After Legal. Take care.
Take care. Have a good night.